Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values.
You know, in life, you got a couple different groups of people. You got people that do and people that don't do.
True.
You got people that kind of sit and think about things. You got people that get out and get it done. You got people that are fake and faux, and they maybe take a picture of something on Instagram and look. They got people who don't even have time for that because they're busy actually doing the real thing. And we have just such a person here with us today, one of our favorite guests, one I always learn a ton from every time he's on the Flyover Conservative podcast, all the way from Africa, Vidar Ligard.
Yay!
Look at you. Now,
Welcome. I love your outfit.
You're via Scandinavia, Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Africa for years now, but you've never been on with that shirt. This is the first time.
Yeah, this is typical East African. I mean, I got Viking helmet, I got this shirt. So it just depends on the day what kind of hat we put on, but it's East Africa today.
Do you have a cowboy hat from when you used to live in Oklahoma? Or what do you have that represents Oklahoma?
Well, that's a good question.
You could just mess your hair up. It looks like the wind hit it, and you're like, oh, that's authentic Oklahoma right there.
Right. Tornado Alley. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, well, thanks for joining us again today. We always learn a ton. You've dedicated your life really to first of all, humbly being a student and learning from God's word, the book of Proverbs, life, and then taking those things and then just pouring them into the world and kind of following, where God's led you. So I know every conversation we have, we always learn so much because you always have a little different perspective on things, and it's always based on kingdom principles. I know whenever we talk about something that's kind of confusing and complex, and how's this, you're like, it's not that complex at all. It's like this. And you're like,
so true.
I love it.
Life gets a whole lot better, a whole lot easier when you learn that it's more blessed to give than to receive. So I just discovered that truth, and let's get after it. Just help people.
I love it. We have a situation going on here in the United States, and I'm sure the Flyover family, you've heard it, but Dave and I were actually interviewed today on OAN, and one of the topics that we were talking about was a January 6th guy, Nathan Hughes. The FBI came to his house. They arrested him, they took him in, and then they went back to his house and they started searching his home, and he had a safe there, and the safe was locked. And so they got a hold of the manufacturer, Liberty Safe, and they sent the warrant and said, we have a warrant to get into the safe. We want the master number. And Liberty Safe turned over the master number to the FBI, and they went through the safe. And so there's obviously a lot of pushback from conservatives saying, why would this number be given to the FBI? Liberty is coming back with, that's our policy. They are looking to change the policy in the future, which is pretty cool because, we've been talking, with Bud Light, with Target, a lot of conservatives started boycotting, started pushing back. And so Liberty got nervous. And they're like, hey, we'll change the policy in the future. If you want to have that number scrubbed and we don't have that number, then we won't have anything on file. It's just if you can't get into your safe because you've lost your combination, we can't help you. And so there's some cool things that are coming from that. But the thing that
they're scared of getting targeted or Bud Lighted or anything like that. So.
The thing that we talked about was let's actually look at something higher than that. Let's look at the FBI. Why do we have to be so concerned about the FBI and it not being actually a fair policies and fair things that they're doing? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So I want to pose this question to you, Vidar, because you've lived underneath of the authority of many different governmental structures, and your life's dedicated. If people want to go to safarimission.org, look at you're not a stand on the corner just handing out tracts kind of missionary. You teach classes and help break generational poverty and pull people up. So anywhere where you have authority, it's used. You use that power. You use the resources, the money, the influence, everything you have to raise people up. And I feel like everyone's under some sort of authority. If you're in a family, there's an authority structure. We're always sort of subject to the restraint or discipline of the authority figure in the next rung up. When we've seen the Harvey Weinstein stuff with people, his authority in the movie industry and abusing it, on those that are weaker than him. In a stronger person and weaker person relationship physically, can beat them up and take their money. If you have a power just because you're physically empowering, you can take kids' lunch money in middle school. It's like every authority figure kind of has something, and we're looking at this with the FBI. And there's kind of been created a Gestapo kind of they don't work for the people in general. They're sort of, the people should be fearful of an authority figure, but it's not the structure that's bad. It's whoever has their hands on the lever of control. We're sort of at the mercy of the amount of restraint and character of the person that has power. Whether Proverbs talks a lot about whether people rejoice or sad. It's based on who is in power and why. So I feel like in the United States, there's a lot of powerful agencies that have sort of become the marketing arm or the military arm, depending on the case, of whoever's in power. And it's increasing. There's them pulling up to this guy's house, but it's created a different vibe. It's adversarial between us and the enforcement agencies between us. I'd like to have you break this down a little bit, just because I respect your insight so much in these matters, because you look through this lens of God's word as clearly and better than anybody I've ever met.
Well, I think there's a lot of different thoughts here. When Peter and John were put before the Sanhedrin, or before the court, basically there in Acts chapter 4, they tell them straight up, you choose for yourself which is better, to listen to you or to listen to God. There is that side of things. That is when government is in direct opposition to the things of God. Of course, in Romans 13, you have that, we do have authority over us. So we certainly don't want Somalia, complete anarchy. There needs to be authority at all kinds of different levels. Personally, I've always been one that I listen to the higher authority. So I've got an employer that doesn't pay attention to the Constitution, and as an employee, I'm going to go by the Constitution. That's the higher authority that's above my employer if I'm an employee. And there are certain instructions that God has given me, and that's the highest authority that there is. I'm going to go by that no matter what anybody says. Now, I personally had grandparents that were under occupation with evil government back in 1940s, and it was illegal to own a radio. Well, our family had the radio on the B-Cube. It's kind of hard to find it if you're not prepared to go search the B-Cube, and a lot of other hiding places I could talk about. So there are situations and cases where you should not be trusting the government, and maybe that's where we are in various ones of Western world countries, where a large percentage number of population have thought you could trust the government, and maybe we shouldn't fully trust the government. I think it's good wisdom to learn how to trust God and not allow your life to rely on the government. So look out to be a little bit more self-sufficient. If you're concerned about where you're banking, well, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Share it between multiple different banks. So if one closes all your accounts, then the other one probably won't close it all on the same day. Just be a little wise in some different areas like this. With food supply and different things,
Ultimately, there's never any such thing as there's no such thing as never being under authority, though. I remember, when the defund the police was such a trendy, thing to say, and now we're suffering some of the consequences of that. The crime rates have just gone through the roof in these really blue cities,
and
but
people don't want to be police officers.
Oh, the recruitment's down, almost, I think 40%, in police agencies. So it's like just a spiraling thing. But even in Seattle, they created this little, when I say they, I mean just the anarchist, on the streets, created the city of Chaz. It was like a few block area in downtown Seattle. No police allowed. Well, within a couple of days, there was still enforcement, people walking around with sticks and taking things, and there was people in the Chaz with guns, and like there's never not an authority. You just don't have you have a rogue authority that takes over, but there's never an authority vacuum. There's always going to be somebody with more power, strength, bigger weapon, bigger stick than somebody else, and so we always have those things, in place.
Authority will always be there. It's good to know who's who, and understanding the hierarchy of authority. When there is rogue authority, oftentimes you can look at what is the level above the rogue authority, and if that is a proper authority, then you follow the level that's above the rogue authority. That's what I've done in my personal life in several different cases.
Now, you grew up in Norway. You were sharing some stories with us that was interesting that we didn't know. Because, we look at Norway and think, man, okay, I mean, it's pretty put together. Things are, flowing pretty well. But you were talking about 250 years ago, it was truly one of the most dysfunctional places in all the world. In maybe U.S. history.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not in U.S. history, but world history.
We've never been to any Scandinavian country, but their marketing is phenomenal because for us, it's associated with nothing but success.
Yeah.
Real clean, studious, polite, good structure. It's like they do well in whatever the task is. And when we were in ministry school in California, it was like, I don't know, maybe 70 nations were represented in this school, and we did all kinds of projects. We go clean a park and do different outreaches and things. And there's I don't know, in the revival group thing we were in, there was probably 4 kids that were from Norway.
Yeah.
And I used to joke like, hey, I'll take 1 kid from Norway. You can have 10 of whatever else you want, because it was they worked. We got stuff done. It was this, it was just they were just great at being. So it's like, I don't know if they just only let the great ones out, and they keep all the slackers at home. So it's just good marketing. But all my interactions have been really, really good.
Yeah, part of that is, people that migrate from one country to another, that they have usually a something within them that just refuses to stop at problems. They're overcomers typically. So you see a lot of that with different ones migrating. But honestly, I mean, the nation of Norway was really put in a really good foundation 250 years ago. You've got the Viking era, and we think that's cute and fun, but I mean that was nothing but a bunch of bullies and evil people and raiders and manslayers and taking people captive and all kinds of stuff. And then about 250 years ago, Norway became the poorest country in all of Europe at that time. It wasn't even politically independent. It didn't have hardly any institutions. There was no university. There's no functional educational system for children. The concept of money was almost non-existent. It was just a bartering economy. Violent riots were common. And alongside the roads, it was not uncommon to find people that had just simply died from hunger.
Wow.
Now, by law then, it was illegal for commoners to hold a gathering without approval from the government. And even with approval, a government representative had to be present at the meeting.
Wow.
So, and then within the country, you could not travel. A passport was needed for any in-country travel, and passports were only given to those that could prove that they had a business or government need for a passport. And so the masses then were bound to live and only move about in their own homestead. That's Norway 250 years ago. I mean, it's so bad, it's really hard to imagine what it was like. And then, of course, on top of all this, you've got, anywhere from an 8 to 10 or 11 month long winter, depending on where in the country you're at. So if you didn't do your homework during the summertime and split the wood and all of that and provide enough food to last you through the winter, then, by now those people are gone because they just didn't survive. Mm-hmm. So super rough area.
Well, the highlights we were talking about there of authority not working for the benefit of its subjects. Mm-hmm. It sounds like there was authority. If you can enforce a don't gather policy, that means you have an organizational structure. That means you have the ability to back up what you say. Mm-hmm. But it seems like only for the benefit of maybe a ruler or somebody in charge, but not for the masses in any way.
It obviously turned
Isn't
around.
that exactly what we did during the lockdowns?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, I was gonna
We
say,
did this in the Western world.
that sounds, I think, very appealing to a lot of power hungry people here in the United States right now.
So how did it turn
Right.
around, Vidar? What happened in the country that obviously that lots changed in 250 years?
Yeah, so the situation Norway was under is what evil has always tried to do. Whether you're talking about the Tower of Babel or Babylon or the Romans, it's always been a small, powerful elite trying to, in an evil way, control the masses. Well, this preacher came about, and he walked all over the nation, preached for 8 years before they locked him up for preaching without a license. So he had only an 8-year long ministry.
Wow.
But there was two things in his message. One was turn people's hearts back to God. And we know Proverbs talks about that. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. You have to have an ethical or a moral foundation that people live by. We're in the Western world today. I mean, you can get the best educated people around and can't or won't define gender. A large percentage of the population doesn't know what natural relations are. I just looked yesterday. Harvard University was ranked at the very bottom in free speech. It's supposed to be the best university. We got 60% living from paycheck to paycheck. So we're headed down some of the same paths, and these civilizations, they really have not survived unless you do what happened in Norway. You've got to place the people back on a moral sound foundation. We did that in the United States during the First Great Awakening. We did it during the Second Great Awakening. It can be done again. Norway did this 250 years ago. Hans Nielsen Hauge is the name. He's known as the most influential person in the history of the nation. Even secular historians will often agree with this.
Wow.
In
8
years.
years of ministry.
Wow.
Most influential person in the history of the nation. Because everywhere he walked, he was able to turn people's hearts back to God. And when you have a heart turned back to God, everything doesn't become about me anymore. Things becomes about my neighbor, because you become hungry for showing the love of God, the same love that God has showed me. I want to show my neighbor. And so you become interested in building society. You don't just, what can government do for me? What can society do for me? It becomes, what can I do for my neighbor? What can I do for society? And instead of becoming or staying as a consumer, which is why 60% of the nation is living from paycheck to paycheck, because we got a consumer mentality. It's all about, trying to get a bigger house and a bigger car and all of this. And so you got to change that mentality for us to become producer. And the question is not how much can I consume? The question is, what can I do to grow my capacity to produce? And when you do that, you get out of the rat race. You get out from underneath dependency. If you're at a $50,000 a year kind of an income level, well, there may or may not be some credit card debt there, but you don't have a lot of leverage, and you're very limited in how many people you can actually help at that level, because a high percentage of what you earn is probably going to go just for your own personal sustenance. So you have to fight to grow your capacity to produce, to get to a much higher level. And God is very clear about this, that we should be the head and not the tail.
Yep.
And in the United States today, the median household income is about $60,000 a year. So if you're below that, we're the tail. If we're at 60 or 70 or 80, we're right there in the middle area. So you've got to push yourself to get beyond 6 digits. Of household. And how do you do that? Well, what's the value of the problems you're solving every day? If you're cleaning the floor, there's a certain economic value in that, of solving the problem of a dirty floor. Well, work on being able to solve higher value problems. You'll have a higher income, and when you learn to live below your means, be frugal with what you have, then you can help more and more neighbors, you'll be able to employ more and more people. You'll be free of the system. And as Robert Kiyosaki says, you'll be out of the rat race.
Yeah.
So good.
And if you get a high number of the population out of the rat race, their hearts are in tune with God, and they're wanting to help one another, then those people don't have to be the majority in the country, but they're going to control the ethics and the moral fabric of that country, and that country is going to grow.
I
Wow.
love it. It's interesting, in business, we used to say all the time, the person that solves the most problems makes the most money. And we'd say, I eat problems for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You got a problem, give me the problem. We'd even say to people that we worked with, they would bring us a problem and we would say, do you want us to make more money or do you want to make more money? Because if we solve this problem, our income is going to increase and yours won't. Do you want to be the problem solver or do you want us to be the problem solver? And that is such a great point. And it's critical, and it's where our country is right now. We'd rather somebody else take care of it than we actually step in and be like, okay, I'm going to be part of the solution. Let me make a difference in
Or
this
sitting
country.
back and think, well, we just need to get Donald Trump back in the White House and our problems are going to go away. Like, we need a person to save America. And I tell you what, it's really getting clear.
We need problematic to me.
It is.
We need Americans to get saved
Yes.
versus putting all of our effort into America getting saved by a person.
Right. It's still the same mindset of shifting the responsibility of fixing the problem onto somebody else. And that's what the problem is. You're wanting somebody else to fix the problem. Well, my own personal circumstances is that's not a result of the circumstances. It's a result of my capacity to build stuff around me. And so if I increase my capacity to build stuff around me, my circumstances are going to change. And I'm sorry, but the government is still not powerful enough to completely control my circumstances. I can look myself in the mirror, and I'm the most powerful person. God working through me, sure, that's fine, but still, I have to do something about that.
Yep.
And grow my capacity. And when I grow my capacity, my yard's going to be greener. It's going to be cleaner. Stuff's going to be better around the house, and the house value is going to increase, and the neighbors will see it, and you'll be an asset in the neighborhood, and you'll be somebody that people look to for answers. Yeah. And that's the way it should be for all believers.
So Vidar, I got to throw this at you real quick because something that's become a real popular kind of catchphrase, is Christian nationalism. And they'll say, well, if you're bringing these Christian beliefs and you're saying that the nation all needs to be Christians, then you're no different than some kind of other, dictator. And they kind of will compare that idea to negative leaders in the past that led socialist movements in Europe, for example. What do you have to say when people say, hey, you need to keep all these Judeo-Christian values out of our schools, out of our government, out of all institutions? They're trying to remove the Bible in every way possible from education, remove the Bible itself from conversation. And definitely they don't want anything with a Judeo-Christian perspective injected into the political realm. Certainly. Do you think that you can pull apart Judeo-Christian values and a thriving nation?
Well,
can they be separated?
No, the way I look at this is every person in government, they're going to live according to their belief system. So if you can't have people in government with Judeo-Christian values, then you're going to have people with the absence of values. So if you can't put people in there that knows the light and knows the truth, then you're going to end up with people that only knows darkness and knows evil. I mean, there's only two choices about this. Countries that have been properly built on Judeo-Christian values, I mean, there's a lot of religious kind of things that have been done that are not good. But nations that have been built on Judeo-Christian values, they have been built. And where those values have been removed, the places have been destroyed. That's where you end up with case studies like Babylon. Well, you end up with the one world government absent of God kind of ideas. Communism is in line with this. Nazism is in line with this. Globalist thinking that we're seeing today is in line with the same kind of things. It creates nothing but destruction in the long run. Yes, the Babylonians, they were able to build a society for a short while. The Romans were able to build a society for a short while, but it was the absence of morality that eventually destroyed these
Yeah.
civilizations.
All of them. Yeah.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
it's the same here. If you remove the truth, if you remove the idea that you shall not kill, you shall not steal, you shall not lie. I mean, these are just basic morality kind of things. And if you remove those things, society will collapse. I mean, there's no other way about it.
And you guys are doing amazing things with Safari Mission, where you actually just had an organization go in on a mission trip and actually go to a place where they'd never had somebody share the gospel, and 350 people got saved. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, actually, the last couple of months, both in July and in August, we had teams. These are students that we have in Nairobi, Mombasa, going into areas that are either unreached or semi-unreached. Difficult areas to get into. The team just a couple of weeks ago went into the area that's close to South Sudan. That's the world's youngest nation. There's insecurity issues and different things going on there, but we know the only way to get darkness out is to get the light in.
Yep.
Come on.
And when you don't always focus so much on trying to get the darkness out, spend more time and effort on getting the light in, which is what our team did, sharing the gospel with various ones. We did see 350 people born again. We're seeing people healed in their bodies. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of things. I mean, in the Congo, we're seeing results, businesses getting started, churches getting started. It's real simple. It's not that difficult. Just focus on getting the light in there, and things will start turning around.
And that's got to be the future of definitely the nation that I live in here in the good old USA, is this movement towards, this is a problem. Everything needs to go to the White House down. The president needs to say everything has to be federal. The federal government, needs to fix this, and everything that was structured to be my problem first. It'd be in my county, my city, my area, my state, and then, I mean, theoretically, yes, things can go up to a federal level, but ultimately, if you scale that back down to the seed's inside my heart. The real solution to my world getting better is my heart getting better. Me having more love in my marriage, for my children, for my neighbor, for even, just for the tasks that I put my hand to. Everything I do is as in worship to the Lord. Like that is the fix. Is on the individual
Mother Teresa
basis.
said this, that if you want to go change the world, that's great, but go home, love your family.
Yeah.
And that's really where it needs to start. In the Garden of Eden, we didn't have government, we didn't have churches, we didn't have hospitals. We had two institutions. It was the institution of marriage, leave and cleave, that's in the Garden of Eden. And God placed the man in the garden to work it and to till it. So the institutions of work and family, those are the cornerstones of any society. And if you want to fix a society, you got to start with the cornerstones. And the cornerstone is not in Washington, D.C. It's not a king or a president or any of that. Thank God for that. We do need authority. We need good people there. But you need a grassroots movement where you build good families, good work ethics, and that's how you build a society.
I love it. Okay, so people go to safarimission.org. When you go there, Vidar has a book, which we highly recommend. And you can get the book there, A Fork in the Road. You can download it for free, which is absolutely amazing. He's giving it away. They can also get a hard copy. Is that right, Vidar, from there as well?
You can order a hard copy. You can download a PDF of the book for free. It's basically principles, day-to-day habits on how to get out of the rat race. We've had lots of people start businesses, grow financially, grow economically, get off of me-centristic type mentalities and start doing something for society, start to become producers. And we know that we're in the mindset of blessing other people, we be blessed ourselves as well. So great principles, helping a lot of people there. A fork in the road, poverty or prosperity, that's our choice.
I love it. You can also donate to the ministry there at safarimission.org. And then as we close out this interview today, we have a video we're going to play. So set that up for our Flyover family, what they're going to see. Vidar, what will they see in the video?
This is just what we have done the last few weeks. There's footage from the Congo. There's footage from the border area to South Sudan. Just hardship areas where you see some of the things that if you get involved with Safari Mission, this is what you're getting involved with. So just a lot of good footage.
Well,
I love it.
We'll end with that. Vidar, thank you again for coming on. And again, Flyover family, if you are in a position and you want to give into a ministry in a place that you can't go yourself, this is one that actually changes the trajectory of people's lives by teaching kingdom principles, helping them start small businesses, helping them to get involved in activities that actually reverse multi-generational poverty in a powerful way. We'll play the video. Vidar, thank you so much for coming on.
This is Vidar Ligard. I'm coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya in East Africa. Just want to give an update. I want to thank you so much for your involvement and your help that you're doing with us every month. There is a lot of things going on. Next week, we have 33 students that are going to Turkana, that is on the South Sudan border, the youngest country on earth. 33 of them are going into semi-unreached area. They're doing children's evangelism, outreaches. Last time we had an outreach like this is a couple of months ago. 350 people were saved in that outreach. Here at this set, we just recorded a podcast, how to start a chicken farm. We're helping people become entrepreneurs, combining the gospel with entrepreneurship so that they can have sustenance and increase their standard of living here in East Africa. Lots of other things going on. Twice we are on the radio in the Congo. We are reaching 3 million people by radio, half-hour program, twice a week. Churches are started, churches are growing, businesses are started, all kinds of just amazing stories. We have 190 students in Bible college right now. They will go out together with the 500 other graduates to start other churches. And also, we are working with the High Court in Kenya, and we are providing spiritual guidance, teaching, and different things for the high judges here in the nation of Kenya. In a couple of weeks' time, we will also go to Kibera. Kibera is Africa's largest slum. So when you help Safari Mission, you're helping people in the slum, you're helping through radio, you're raising up Bible college students, and you're also helping the elite in the country, the high court judges. All of the spread of society is being helped as you're helping Safari Mission. So we want to thank you so much and let you know there is a lot of great testimony and there are great things happening here in East Africa. God bless.
Hello, Flyover family. Join me every Wednesday for the Prophetic Report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical, we're hearing from military intelligence, we're hearing from the financial world, we're hearing from mainstream media, but the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11.
All right, Flyover family, buckle up. We're going to be dropping bombs on pretty much everybody. One of our greatest sources of intel and joy.
Yes, we love these shows. We get so excited.
Sarcasm to another level, but have a lot of fun. This gal was a former Fox News producer, Newsmax, Major League Baseball, current producer of the
Absolute Truth with
Absolute
Emma Robinson.
Truth. The one, the only, Breanna Morello.
Yay!
Boom.
Another fabulous introduction. Thank you, David and
Oh,
Stacey.
We love this time with
we
you.
get so excited. It's a little bit like mentally like at a UFC or something like that when you the tension's building and you know stuff's about to go down. That's what it's like when you're getting excited. Man, we're going to be talking about Kevin McCarthy and J6. We got international. We go through your
Rudy,
Twitter feed.
Giuliani.
For those of you who don't know, in the Flyover family, we go through her Twitter feed and we basically take the news cycles and things you hear about, but we let you look at them through the lens of somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and we learn a ton too.
It's a lot of pressure. I don't want to say I know what I'm talking about, but
Well,
You do.
you do, but you actually put there's an interesting thing I've seen happening here quite a bit. I'm not going to get into the whole stuff. I've seen it lately with sports specifically. Deion Sanders is the one that kind of brought it up because he's so offended by people like Ed Werder and people who wrote articles about him that were just generic, and he's like upset that the news media doesn't wear like Colorado Buffalo gear to the game. Basically,
They're not big fans.
You're not a believer. You're not a believer. Like I didn't know the media was supposed to be a believer in Deion Sanders. They're supposed to like cover it and not be whatever. So I don't want to get into all that stuff. But I noticed this trend of most people in sports media are former players. And they're kind of used to like their buddies high-fiving them, and this kind of stuff, and not like real journalists that are digging into issues. And that's kind of happened in every environment. Somebody who maybe had experience with something moves up and like, hey, you're now the journalist on this thing. Well, just because you could drive a NASCAR doesn't make you a journalist, to investigate NASCAR, whatever the topic is. But you do the work. You call the people, you do the research, you do FOIA requests and this and that.
We learned FOIA requests from you.
Yeah, it's an acronym.
She has a FOIA request.
they're quite lovely.
But you do the heavy lifting that is almost absent in media today and actually get to the source. I know whenever we ask you a question, you're like, that's kind of true, but there's more to it than that, and it's more complicated because of this element. It's like, wow, nobody's talking about that. So.
And Flyover family, if you don't follow Breanna, make sure you go to BreannaMorello.com. It's going to take you right to her Twitter. It's BreannaMorello.com. Make sure you are following her. I mean, truly, this is where I get a lot of great news and kind of a take on it. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I love the way that you speak. You definitely speak in sarcasm. And you have a brilliant mind. And so Flyover family, this is going to really help you to learn to maybe speak a new language that maybe you don't know, but even have better conversations at the water cooler. Be like, oh, well, what about, have you thought of it this way? Breanna, you do such a great job with that. Are you ready to jump in on these tweets?
Let's do it.
Because we got a lot of them today and we have very little time. I'm so excited. Okay, let's start with the first one. This is from the New York Post. It says, migrant arrested 6 times for 14 crimes in first 2 months in New York City.
Oh, he just wants a better life.
No, he just wants a better life. This is crazy.
Shocking. Somebody who came into our country illegally and broke our immigration laws is now committing more crimes when he's here in our country. Shocking.
Yeah.
Not shocking at all for all of us who've been paying attention. But the good news is he obviously rose his hand, was like, I want to go to New York as quickly as possible when he made it through Texas or Arizona, because he knew New York is a lawless state. Not everyone, I know my Long Islanders always get upset because they're I would say heavy red over where I'm from, and not the upstate folks, but it's sadly the people in New York City are. So this is why it's really important, and the counties are fighting back in New York to keep these migrants in New York City, because a lot of them are committing crimes. They don't want to talk about it. There was another video of more illegal migrants assaulting NYPD officers this week because they were taking their illegal scooters. Now, it's super important to understand these bikes and scooters that they use to get around New York City are illegal for a reason, because if you're driving a car, they hit you, they don't have insurance, and you're left to cover the damages on your own. That's why they should not be on the road. And they also can't read our signs. They don't speak English, so they don't know the rules to the road. They drive recklessly. If you've ever been in New York City, you know it's horrible when they're driving the street. So long story short, they know to go to New York because they know New York will be a sanctuary for them and will cover for them. And they are flooding there. And now you have the New York City mayor who's going, oh, it's too much. We're getting 10,000 a month. Well, hello. What do you think about Texas? What do you think Texas and Arizona have been dealing with for years now?
Well, in the same
Yes.
town hall where he referenced the 10,000 a month that they're getting, and is now complaining about what he campaigned on, ironically. I forget what term did he use for Abbott, was like that this like crazy Texan is sending all these people to us, and that's caused this problem. It's not the fact he campaigned on being a sanctuary city.
Right.
And now they're having the schools are overwhelmed with kids that are not required to get vaccinated.
I heard that they were like lined up around the corner of the school in the streets, to try to get in there.
And you got parents that are there working jobs, paying taxes for their kids to go to school, and they can't get in because they're overwhelmed with this influx.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and if you know anything about New York City schools too, they were dealing with a massive class size already. I think the average was like 28 to 30 kids per teacher, which is already insane.
Yeah.
So sadly, the kids who are living in New York City or going to the public schools, they're the ones, American children, who are going to be at a disadvantage now, because now they're getting flooded with more. And what's going to happen is they're going to get a lower quality education. When the rest of us are doing just fine in sadly, better school districts, and that shouldn't be the case, right? Like, I don't think that should be at all. But Democrats know that they could place them in these areas, and the people in the communities will likely just kind of tolerate it. And if they were to go to kind of like a upper, higher middle class neighborhood, they wouldn't tolerate it. Those people, they would push back and make sure that they got what they could with their taxes.
You're right.
There was a period of time they were trying to get them out to some of these other areas. I know Barack Obama got real upset when they were sending migrants over there to Brokeback Vineyard, and said, "Not on my watch. You're going back to New York." So I don't see that working out. It's kind of a case where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it creates this gap that typically you do see in more third world environments. And now they're actually creating that in New York City. They're creating that in San Fran. They're creating that in these sanctuary cities, because you got so many non-contributors, that are messing up the ratios, that we're not designed to be able to take in. So,
Speaking of New York,
Mayor Giuliani isn't a disgrace, but the Associated Press is. Somebody had to say it. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Remember that time when they tried lying to their audience about their relationship with Hamas? I do. And maybe comment on that, and then we're just going to roll straight into the way they manipulate the language on the fundraiser that President Trump held for Giuliani to raise money for him. It's kind of rolled into both.
Yeah, so they called the mayor a disgrace. They said disgraced mayor, and he's not a disgraced mayor at all, especially now we're coming on the horizon of 9/11. He was somebody who, I was a New Yorker at the time, he was somebody who was critical, and all New Yorkers strongly relied on, and all Americans strongly relied on, because he was...
And we have that tweet as well, if we can put it on the screen there.
It was there earlier.
Yep.
He was incredible during those times. And so to call him a disgrace is a disgrace in itself. The Associated Press, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, and I'll let your audience know, because I also did work in local news. A lot of the local news stations can't write their own stories. And so they strongly rely on the Associated Press, called The Wire. The AP puts it out. And so what they could do is they could copy and paste the scripts that the Associated Press is putting out and put it in their prompters for their anchors to read. So that's how horrible stories like referring to Giuliani as a disgrace will be multiplied on all different local news outlets, because they're going to read that script and then they're just going to keep saying it without even thinking about what they're actually saying. And that's why it's so important to call that stuff out. The Associated Press is a garbage news organization. When they sat there and they played stupid when Israel blew up the building that Hamas was in and Hamas was shooting rockets out of, they said, "Oh no, we didn't know.
We had no idea.
How did you not notice a rocket?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a great point. They are definitely a disgrace, for sure.
They are.
So that's sad. I really hope that President Trump was able to raise a lot of money for Giuliani, because
I feel
he
bad
deserves
for him.
it.
I really
Me too.
do.
It's really
he's
sad.
He has really gotten what the lawfare used against all of these people is terrible. But Giuliani is really taking a beating.
Yeah. But that's the goal. That's what they're doing, right? They don't even care if they even win these cases in court. It's more so drying them, broke. Like Giuliani, like we spoke about before, Jeff Clark, another incredible person, has done nothing but provide all these amazing services to this country, whether it was over at the EPA or just the DOJ, and we kind of just disrespect them because we don't like their politics. We don't, they do. And we allow them to spend all this money. Peter Navarro this week, another example. Peter Navarro has spent thousands and thousands of dollars looking for a legal team, and for what purpose? I mean, he was in D.C. They convicted him in less than an hour, and I don't remember that. I don't think that trial lasted more than a day or two. No one stands a fair trial with this new DOJ.
No, it's very true. Okay, let's move on to what's going on in Maui and Ukraine. So, Biden administration pledges new $600 million to Ukraine day after announcing $1 billion package. You heard that, Maui? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's disgraceful. It's another situation where they're just spitting in these people's faces. They're Americans, and for some reason, they are not the priority. All these crazy stories have been coming about Maui, right? We know that there's more children missing. The Associated Press even reported it, and I wouldn't normally cite them as I just described, but that a lot of residents were barricaded and they weren't able to get to the highways. There was barricades up so they couldn't get onto the highways, which is deeply concerning. No one's investigating that.
Yep.
And then you have the Biden regime who is just saying, oh, we're just going to give you $700, but we're going to keep flooding Ukraine with billions and billions of more dollars, even though Ukraine is not a part of the United States at all, but they are corrupt. And we know they're extremely corrupt. And that's the reason why the Biden regime is so focused on that. They keep sending people over there. I think Blinken was just there this week to kind of and here's a question I have for your audience, right? And I know that they probably get this. When have you ever seen members of an administration and the United States president go to a country that's at war without a U.S. military presence? Why are they all going there?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense unless there's corruption involved. I've never seen it before in my lifetime. And everyone else older than me that says that they've never seen it before. So there's a reason why we keep doing this. And unfortunately, if you're in Hawaii, Hawaii's historically a Democratic dominated state. And unfortunately, they're going to have to push back a little bit right now because they're losing out big time. These people have completely neglected you. And I thought East Palestine, because they were Republican, that's the reason why they were getting the short end of the stick. But now that I see that it's being done in Hawaii, I think that they just equally hate all Americans in this new regime.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it's not because they're Americans. It's just they mentally have a two class. You got a farmer in the house, and then there's cattle in the pasture. And either you're a farmer or you're cattle, and it's an us and a them. And it's just hey, let them eat cake. Kind of vibe. We've seen it before. It never works out well for those saying it. So it's usually short lived. All right. This is great, Speaker McCarthy, but I hear there's J6 defendants who are having their constitutional rights violated as we speak. Maybe you can look into that. And while you're up and moving, man, I love this. It's so good.
This is so well written.
Maybe you can get around to releasing the J6 surveillance footage like you promised. So you didn't just invent that. You're like, hey, dude, you said this.
Because he was saying that the Capitol's open to everyone. Touch on that. That's crazy. He said, it's open to anyone and everyone.
Yeah, he's absolutely useless. So as we spoke about earlier, I reach out for comment quite often. McCarthy's office, when I worked at Fox, loved responding. Now that I'm independent, they don't like to respond at all. McCarthy is a horrible leader. He has not done anything that he said he was going to do. But we knew this. I mean, Congressman Matt Gaetz and Andy Biggs, they all held the line, and they didn't want to confirm him as their leader and vote for him and support him as a leader because they knew this was going to happen. Here he is in the Capitol, so proud that he's meeting with Americans and shaking their hands. Hey, dude, how about you go hang over to the D.C. gulag and start shaking those people's hands? That the innocent Americans who are being ridiculously targeted by our federal government right now, and it's never ending. I mean, there's still people being arrested and being prosecuted, and this is what his priority is. And he's so afraid. You have to just assume at this point that they're just so afraid to release the J6 footage because they know how incriminating it would be to the federal government, right? Because we know that they had such a major role at participating in it. I mean, it's everyone who I know who has been charged. That's like an Oath Keeper, Proud Boy. None of them have been charged with committing any violent acts. And then you see all these videos of violence being committed, and they're telling you to look at the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers. But hello, what about these people who are being violent? And then you're also learning a lot of these people haven't even been prosecuted or charged. And then you start to realize why, with all the technology we have, with all the crazy liberals online IDing these people, why wouldn't they charge these individuals who are being violent? And we all know why. It's because they are members of the federal government, whether it's informants or they were somehow working with the FBI in another capacity. And that's why they're not charging them. And then you have McCarthy just sitting there being disrespectful and just showing people walking into the Capitol and he's just shaking your hand.
Well, he's proud of himself, pat himself in the back because the farmer walked out of the house and went out in the pasture to pet a few cows. And it's like, hey, good for you. This is not going away. It just keeps going. And I think it's the people that are standing up and saying, hey, we're not moving past this, in a 9/11 kind of way. We want truth and real investigation in this. And somebody that's probably the best in the business, I think she spent 17 years on 60 Minutes, one of the best investigative journalists of all time, Laura Logan, is doing a multi-part series, a documentary on the people telling their stories. I want to play the trailer for it real quick. She just sent it over today. I'm excited for this to come out because once you see the images and you hear the story told in a compelling way, things change, people get it. Let's play this clip real quick and get your reaction.
You've learned a lot more about January 6th. You talked to hundreds of defendants. What have you learned?
Well, first I've learned about pain.
I believe in my nephew. I am proud of him. He was just larger than life.
We wanted to come and kind of just share what really happened today.
He had never been in trouble before in his life, so this was just so overwhelming. I was sitting in my home, and I got a call from his uncle.
What did he say?
They robbed him of his hope, his will to live. They took his fight away from him.
They broke him.
They completely broke him, and they broke his heart.
It's hard to find the truth these days, and it's needed now more than ever. We've traveled the country to bring you honest, accurate reporting.
Bottom line, Laura, if they didn't want people going to the Capitol, they didn't want people even getting close to the Capitol, it never would have happened. It happened because they wanted to happen.
No one was stopping you.
This is the government we're talking about, okay? Like, they have like nukes and F-15s. They can do whatever they want to stop average people like me.
34-year-old Roseanne Boylan was one of 4 people killed.
This was a woman who got pushed down, smothered, trampled, and then beaten.
Had this been covered at all by anyone else in the media?
No.
They named me as one of the insurrectionists that was preventing the cops from rescuing her.
Was that true?
Absolutely not. This crutch was right at my feet, and I put it above my head, and I said, in the name of Jesus, Lord, please stop this.
Jeremy was at the Capitol providing security.
I mean, he's quite literally the poster boy for the Special Forces.
When you were arrested, they never sat you down and said, "Is this yours?"
No, because they're the same officers that recruited me on December 9th of 2020.
From Department of Homeland Security.
The same 2 guys.
These people are hiding all of this information, and judges have let them get away with that.
You could be here forever.
I will be here as long as the American people leave me here.
I'm Laura Logan with the rest of the story. Join us.
Wow.
It's so hard not to get emotional on that. Mm-hmm. The last person you saw there who's in jail is Jeremy Brown, and his case is like the saddest because he didn't go into the Capitol. Sorry, guys.
No.
I spoke with him multiple times. We've had him on the show. Me and Amro got very emotional because he's somebody, and I push him with all these congressional members. He is somebody who they were trying to recruit him as an informant. He didn't do it. He's a former Green Beret. He's a highly respected individual. You read his background. His brother was a veteran as well. His whole family has served his country. Sadly, his brother committed suicide, and he lost his brother. But this guy is so strong. So he saw Christopher Wray testifying and saying that like there was nobody for the FBI on January 6th in or around the Capitol. And Jeremy saw that and was really upset. And he had the footage of the FBI trying to recruit him as an informant. He had the surveillance footage, which you saw outside those 2 officers, those agents outside of his home. And then his girlfriend said that he wasn't there. And so they agreed to meet later on. And he said, the only condition is I have to record it. And so they allowed him to. And in the recording is you hear them say like, oh, we're going to potentially work together, or you might potentially be working with the federal government again. And they're joking about it. Jeremy rejected it. He released this footage, and just weeks later, he was hit with 2 misdemeanor charges. Misdemeanors. So they're not felonies. They were just minor charges. He was never in the Capitol. He actually is on video rescuing a woman who's about to be trampled by the police, and he rescues her and pulls her out of there and saves her life. Right. So it could have been 5 people dead that day, and he saved this woman. And the DOJ goes back, spits in his face, gets an arrest warrant and a search warrant for his home here in Florida. And they ended up saying that they found a illegal gun, which according to court records, the illegal gun was a sawed-off gun. when his brother committed suicide, it was a gun that was passed down throughout his family. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I just get so upset about this story. It's really, it's angry. Like,
these are real people.
They don't understand this. Yeah. And so they hit him with charges with that. They also claimed there was 2 grenades found on his property. Those grenades, they had him DNA tested. His fingerprints weren't on them. And there was a hair particle that didn't match him, his girlfriend, or any of his animals in his home. They hit him with that. Then they also hit him with other charges regarding documents they said were classified and he was not allowed to bring home. But the jury found him not guilty on those 2 charges. I believe it was 2 charges. So he was convicted on the guns and the grenades, and he was sentenced to, I believe, 8 years in prison. But, right, 2 misdemeanor charges for staying in a restricted area in D.C., that trial hasn't even happened yet. He's been sitting in jail. And if you look at the pictures, and that's what got me really upset, because if you look at the pictures, I haven't seen Jeremy. We've only spoken on the phone. He's aged drastically in jail. And that's heartbreaking, because this is somebody who shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right.
And I'm sure it's causing him a lot of stress. I've sat on calls listening to him argue in his own defense for his trials and like his court dates and like trying to speak. He didn't have a lawyer at first for the Tampa case. And so he was arguing on his own behalf. And you could hear the emotion in his voice, because he's like trying to talk about the Constitution and implement what should be his constitutional rights. And he's just getting smacked around by the judge, the DOJ. Like, nobody cares about the Constitution. And so seeing him, I'm glad Laura spoke with him. He's an incredible person. Everyone needs to know his story. Sadly, they are going to leave him in jail for a couple more years. And it's just a huge disappointment. And I've reached out to congressional members. I'm trying to get his story heard. Everyone's keeping their distance from this story, and we don't know why. But he's a good human being, and he should not be in prison.
Wow.
And that's why we got to break these down story by story by story, because they're real people.
Yeah.
And until you put skin and flesh and on them, it's just a narrative that's been spun with the same footage by the major mainstream media outlets. And we're in a place, and the Bible references as an era where good is called evil and evil is called good. And it's almost like the earth itself right now is crying out for justice. We all feel that, and it needs to be served.
I totally agree. Thank you so much for sharing the information that you had there and adding to that. We really appreciate it. You are the best. Thank you for all the research that you've done and everything that you do to try to help get out this information so we all know the truth.
Thank you, David and Stacey. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Do your feet ache and throb in pain with every step you take every day of your life? Well, kiss those days goodbye with slippers from MyPillow.com. How about that flimsy, flat little excuse for a pillow that's nothing but 8 hours of disappointment, causing you pain in your neck every single night? You can wake up with nothing but butterflies and rainbows around your head with a MyPillow pillow. Those hardwood floors hurting your old bones? No more with a MyPillow dog bed. Are your towels worn thin, flimsy, more patchy than Joe Biden's memory? There's nothing better than absorbent towels from MyPillow.com. For all of these products and more, go to MyPillow.com and use promo code FLYOVER for up to 66% off.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Flyover Conservatives podcast with David and Stacey Whited. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment below. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's podcast, share with those who came to mind. Be blessed and make it a great day.